My phone lit up at 12:13 on a Thursday night with a charge notification I was never meant to notice. $7,840. Luxury travel deposit. 4 passengers. Santorini, Athens, and Mykonos. My name is Claire Hensley. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a senior payment risk investigator for a corporate travel platform in Minneapolis. My job is to find patterns in charges that do not belong where they appear: duplicate bookings, stolen cards, fake approvals, quiet little lies dressed up as business expenses. So when I saw my own credit card attached to a vacation I had not booked, I did not panic. I just sat up in bed, reached for my glasses, and read the alert twice. The room was dark, except for the blue light from my phone and the thin stripe of streetlight coming through my blinds. My laundry basket was still sitting by the closet. A cup of peppermint tea had gone cold on my nightstand. Outside, a snowplow scraped slowly down the street, even though it was barely November and the first snow had been light. I remember all of that because my body went very still. Not shocked, not yet, just still. That same morning, my father had announced the trip over brunch at my parents' house, like he was sharing something joyful. He sat at the end of the dining table in his gray quarter-zip sweater, cutting into a piece of toast with more attention than toast needed. "We finally booked Greece," he said. My mother smiled into her coffee. My younger sister, Paige, made a small, excited sound. My brother Ethan nodded like he had known for weeks, which, of course, he had. I looked from one face to another and waited for someone to look at me. No one did. Then my mother said, very gently, "Claire, sweetheart, we decided to keep this one simple, just the four of us. You understand, don't you?" Just the four of us. My parents, Paige, Ethan. Not me. I was sitting beside the window, with a linen napkin folded across my lap, holding the mug my mother always gave me because it had a tiny chip near the handle. The good mugs were for guests, and somehow, even in the house I had grown up in, I had slowly become something less than that. I nodded once. I did not ask why. I did not ask how long they had been planning it. I did not ask why the daughter, who had paid their property tax shortfall in March, Ethan's emergency car repair in June, and Paige's temporary rent gap in August, was suddenly not part of a family vacation. I just said, "Okay." My father looked relieved, which hurt more than if he had looked guilty. "That's my girl," he said, "always reasonable." If you have ever been the person everyone calls reasonable because they know you have been trained not to make things uncomfortable, stay with me. And if you are listening right now, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I always wonder how many quiet people are hearing these stories in quiet rooms of their own. At brunch, nobody mentioned money. That was the part one kept thinking about later. No one said how much the trip cost. No one asked if I wanted to join another time. No one even said, "We wish you could come." They just moved past it, like my absence had already been agreed on by everyone who mattered. Paige started talking about white dresses and blue rooftops. Ethan asked whether the hotels had airport transfers. My mother said she hoped the flights would not be too hard on my father's back. My father told Ethan he had handled everything through an agency because he didn't want the headache. I sat there listening with both hands around my chipped mug. I had brought lemon bars from the bakery near my apartment because my mother liked them. She did not open the box until after I left. That was how my family worked. They accepted what I brought after they finished making sure I knew where I stood. By the time I drove home that afternoon, the humiliation had settled into something familiar, not sharp enough to bleed, more like a bruise you keep pressing because you want to understand why it still hurts. I told myself what I always told myself. They were careless. They did not mean it that way. Maybe they assumed I was busy. Maybe they thought I would say no. Maybe my mother was trying to avoid tension because Paige and I had never been close, and Ethan still acted like my stability was a personal insult. I had a long list of maybes. Women like me usually do. We collect maybes because the truth is harder to hold. I went home, changed into sweatpants, answered 3 work emails, and reheated soup over the stove. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring it too long, staring at the steam rising from the pot, wondering whether this was finally the moment I should stop showing up for people who only remembered me when something needed to be fixed. Then I told myself not to be dramatic. That was another habit. I ate dinner at the small table beside my window. I washed the bowl. One folded the laundry. I watched half an episode of a show I could not follow because my mind kept drifting back to the way my father had said, "That's my girl." Like obedience was affection, like silence was a personality trait. At 12:13, the bank alert came. For a few seconds, I thought it had to be a mistake, not because the amount was impossible, but because the cruelty was too clean. There was something almost insulting about the timing. They had excluded me at breakfast and used my card by midnight. I opened the transaction details. Harbor and Vale Travel Services. Deposit paid. Balance pending. Billing contact. Claire M. Hensley. I stared at my own name until it stopped looking like mine. Then I opened my email and searched the agency name. Nothing came up in my inbox, which meant whoever booked it had not used my email this time. That was interesting. Careful, even. But the card was mine. The billing address was mine. And the charge had gone through because, years earlier, I had paid for a family hotel booking when my father's card was acting up, and apparently my card had stayed somewhere it never should have stayed. I did not call him. That surprised me. The old Claire would have called immediately, voice shaking, giving him a chance to explain. The old Claire would have wanted to hear that it was accidental. She would have offered him the exact excuse he needed, and then been grateful when he accepted it. But I had spent 9 years in payment risk. I knew what accidents looked like. This was not an accident. An accident is a duplicate charge or a saved card chosen once by mistake. An accident does not come after a brunch where 4 people describe a trip in front of the person paying the deposit without knowing she is paying it. An accident does not list your name as the billing contact while leaving you out of the passenger list. I logged into my bank. My hand was steady. That bothered me, too, for a moment. I thought I should be crying. I thought I should feel broken. Instead, something in me had become very quiet, not empty, not cold, just precise. I expanded the charge and saw the note line: Greece family package, Hensley party of 4. Party of 4. I whispered it once in my apartment, not because I needed to hear it, because I needed to remember that they have written it down, a family of 4, on my card. I opened a folder on my laptop and named it Hensley Charges. Then I changed the name to Unauthorized Charges, because the first one sounded too gentle. I took screenshots of the bank alert, the merchant name, the timestamp, and the pending balance notification. I downloaded the card statement from the last 6 months. I searched old texts from my father, my mother, Paige, and Ethan. The pattern came up faster than I expected. "Can you cover this until Friday? Dad will send it back after payroll clears. Please don't make Paige feel worse about needing help. Your brother is under pressure right now. You're better with money, Claire. You know how these systems work." That last one made me stop. My mother had written it 3 months earlier after asking me to handle a hotel dispute for Ethan because he had accidentally booked a non-refundable weekend trip with his girlfriend and then wanted the money back. You know how these systems work? Yes, I did. And for the first time, I decided to let the system work for me. I froze the card. Then I removed every family member from every shared account connected to my payment information. Streaming services, grocery delivery, the gas rewards account my father had used for years, the pharmacy profile my mother still had linked to my card just in case. the hotel rewards account where my father liked to collect points from purchases I had covered. I changed passwords, I turned on two-factor authentication, I logged out all devices. At 12:42, another alert came through. $2,160 attempted. International flight seat upgrades. Declined. I sat back in my chair and looked at that one word. Declined. For years, that word had terrified me. A declined card meant embarrassment, shame, someone at a counter looking at you differently. But that night, it looked clean. It looked honest. At 12:48, another attempt failed. $940. Private island day tour. Declined. At 12:51, $318 for travel protection. Declined. They were still building a beautiful vacation on a foundation they had stolen from me, and they had no idea the ground had already been removed. I put my phone face down and stood up. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the light. I looked tired, not tragic, not destroyed, just tired in the way a person looks when she finally understands that the thing hurting her is not confusion, it is a system. My family had a system. My father decided. My mother softened the decision until it sounded kind. Paige benefited and called it awkward. Ethan shrugged and called it family. And I paid. That was the order of things. At 1:05, I called the bank. The fraud representative asked me if I recognized the merchant. Yes, I say, but I did not authorize the charge. She asked if the card had ever been used by family before. Yes, I said again, with permission. Not this time. There was a small pause on the line, the kind professionals use when they understand more than they are allowed to say. Would you like to dispute the charge and replace the card? I looked at the folder open on my laptop. I looked at the screenshots lined up like little windows into a life I had been pretending was more complicated than it was. Yes, I said, and please make a note that no one else has authorization to speak on my behalf. When the call ended, I did not sleep right away. I sat at my kitchen table in the dim light, with my laptop open and my cold tea beside me, and waited for the next alert that did not come. By morning, they would know. My father would be angry. My mother would be wounded. Paige would be embarrassed. Ethan would say I was making things harder than they needed to be, and they would all expect me to feel guilty before they ever thought to feel ashamed. But this time, I had records. This time, I had timestamps. This time, I had the exact words they had used and the exact amount they had taken. And for once, I was not going to explain my pain until they found a way to make it smaller. I was going to let the facts arrive first. The thing about being used slowly is that it rarely feels like theft at first. It feels like helping. It feels like being the oldest daughter, even when you are not actually the oldest. It feels like being the one with the steady job, the calm voice, the good credit, the reliable car, and the habit of answering the phone on the second ring because emergencies always seem to find you first. In my family, help was never introduced as a demand. It came wrapped in trust. Claire, you're so organized. Claire, you understand money better than the rest of us. Claire, your father doesn't need another thing on his plate. Claire, Paige is sensitive. Claire, Ethan is trying. Those sentences sound small when you hear them one at a time. They sound almost loving. But over the years, they formed a kind of hallway, and every time I walked through it, there was another bill waiting at the end. My father, Martin Hensley, had spent most of his adult life believing respect should arrive before effort. He had owned a small flooring business when I was young, and for a while it did well enough that we lived in a house with a finished basement, a big maple tree in the front yard, and a dining room my mother kept polished like company was always expected. Then contracts slowed. Then he lost a commercial client. Then he started talking more about people who had betrayed him than about invoices he had forgotten to send. By the time I was in college, the business was mostly my mother answering calls and my father blaming the economy. He was not a cartoon villain. That would have been easier. He knew how to be charming. He held doors open for strangers. He tipped well when people were watching. He remembered the names of waitresses and bank tellers and my mother's church friends. He could make a room feel like he belonged in the center of it. At home, though, everything had a cost. If he paid for dinner, he chose the restaurant and mentioned the price. If he helped with something, he brought it up for years. If you disagreed with him, he acted like you had forgotten every sacrifice he had ever made. My mother, Diane, had her own way of keeping the system running. She never raised her voice unless she was alone with me. Around other people, she was soft, careful, and so polished that her disappointment felt like perfume in the air. She could make a request sound like kindness and a boundary sound like cruelty. "Your father is proud," she would say, or "this isn't worth upsetting everyone," or "you know Paige doesn't handle pressure the way you do." That was her favorite version of praise. I was strong enough to be given more pain. Paige was 2 years younger than me and had always been treated like she was made of glass. Pretty glass, expensive glass, glass everyone admired and nobody expected to carry anything heavy. She was not unintelligent. She was not helpless. But she had learned early that if she became overwhelmed, someone would step in before life asked too much of her. Usually, that someone was me. Ethan was 4 years younger than me, and somehow both the baby and the man of the family, depending on which title benefited him that day. If he was careless, he was young. If he wanted authority, he was a grown man. My parents moved between those versions of him so smoothly that nobody ever had to ask why he was still borrowing money at 30. I was the practical one. That was the family title I had been handed. Not the loved one, not the celebrated one, the practical one. At 26, I got my first serious job in payment compliance for a regional hotel booking company. It was not glamorous. I spent long days reviewing chargebacks, merchant disputes, card testing patterns, and travel fraud reports. I learned how people lie when they thought paperwork would not catch them. I learned that fraud often sounds confident. I learned that unauthorized users usually say, "there must be some mistake," before they say anything useful. I learned that the first story someone tells is rarely the cleanest one. At work, that knowledge made me valuable. At home, it made me useful. My father started calling when a charge needed to be reversed. My mother asked me to look at bills she claimed were confusing. Paige forwarded me apartment fees, subscription renewals, late notices, and once a dentist bill she said made her feel sick to look at. Ethan sent screenshots of bank holds like they were natural disasters. At first, I was proud they trusted me. That is embarrassing to admit now, but it is true. I had spent so many years being treated like the extra person at the table that usefulness felt close enough to belonging. When my father said, "Claire knows how to handle this," something inside me stood a little taller. When my mother told her friends I was good with systems, I took it as affection because I wanted it to be affection. I did not understand yet that some people praise the tool while still seeing it as a tool. The first time my card became the family backup, I was 28. We were in Madison, Wisconsin for my aunt's retirement dinner. My father's card declined at the hotel desk. He laughed too loudly and blamed the bank. My mother looked at me with the soft panic she saved for public places. "Claire, honey," she whispered, "can you just put it on yours for tonight? Your father will be humiliated." I remember the lobby clearly. Brown leather chairs, a glass bowl of green apples on the counter. My father standing with his arms crossed, pretending not to listen. The charge was $612. He paid me back 2 weeks later after I reminded him 3 times. I told myself that was fine. Families helped each other. Money came and went. The second time was bigger. A roof repair after a spring storm. My parents were short because, according to my father, a client had delayed payment. The contractor needed a deposit. My mother cried on the phone and said water might get into the upstairs hallway. I paid $3,400. They gave me $500 back that summer and never mentioned the rest. When I asked gently in September, my father looked offended. You keeping score now? I said no. That was the wrong answer. I should have said yes. The next few years blurred into a pattern so ordinary I stopped naming it. I covered Ethan's car repair because he needed to get to work. I paid Paige's moving deposit because my mother said her new apartment was important for her mental health. I put a pharmacy balance on my card because my mother said insurance was being difficult. I booked hotel rooms for family weddings, paid restaurant deposits, covered emergency flights, sent small transfers, sent large transfers, and accepted partial repayments that came late enough to feel like favors. I told myself I could afford it. Most of the time, technically, I could. But that was the trick. My family did not drain me all at once. They taught me to bleed in reasonable amounts. Nobody outside the family would have guessed it. That was the part that made me feel most alone. From the outside, we looked stable. My parents still lived in the same house with the maple tree. My mother still hosted Easter brunch. Paige still posted soft filtered photos of coffee shops and weekend outfits. Ethan still talked about business ideas he never quite started. And I looked fine. I had a clean apartment, a strong job, a retirement account, and a car I paid off early. I did not talk about what I was covering because I did not want to embarrass them. I also did not want anyone to ask the question I was avoiding. Why do they keep needing you but never choose you? That question sat quietly under everything. It sat there when my parents took Paige to a lake resort for her birthday and told me it had been last minute. It sat there when Ethan got courtside basketball tickets from my father for his 30th, and I got a candle from a grocery store bag. It sat there when my mother asked me to help pay for a catered anniversary party, then seated me at the end of the table beside a cousin I barely knew because the center seats were better for couples. It sat there every Thanksgiving when I brought groceries, cooked 2 side dishes, cleaned the kitchen afterward, and still heard my father call Paige the heart of the family. I never hated Paige for being loved differently. I envied how naturally she accepted it. There is a difference. She did not ask for the system, but she benefited from it. And benefiting from something for long enough can start to look like agreement. Once, 2 years before the grease charge, I tried to explain it to my mother. We were standing in her kitchen after Christmas dinner. Everyone else had moved into the living room. There were wine glasses by the sink and a red ribbon stuck to the bottom of my sock. I had just paid for half the meal because my mother said the grocery bill had gotten away from her. I said, "Sometimes I feel like you only call me when something has to be handled." She looked genuinely wounded. That is not fair, Claire. I remember drying my hands on a dish towel and feeling immediately guilty. I'm not trying to be unfair. Your father and I did everything for you girls. I know. Then why say something like that? Because it was true. But I did not say that. Instead, I apologized. That was the old pattern. I would bring up pain, she would treat it like an accusation, and I would comfort her for being hurt by what she had done to me. After that, I stopped trying to explain. I started saving quietly. Not just money, though I did that too. I saved emails, receipts, texts, banknotes, confirmation numbers. I told myself it was because I worked in risk and liked records. That was partly true. The deeper truth was that I had stopped trusting my family's memory. They forgot loans. They forgot promises. They forgot who paid. They forgot who was excluded. But they never forgot what they believed they were owed. The Greece trip was not the beginning. That is what I need you to understand. It was just the first time the whole pattern fit into one clean transaction. A family of 4, paid for by the 5th. By the time that charge appeared on my phone, I already knew the shape of the thing. I knew my father would call it a misunderstanding. I knew my mother would ask me to think of everyone else. I knew Paige would act uncomfortable without being accountable. I knew Ethan would ask why I had to make it a problem now. What none of them knew was that I had spent years learning how to prove a problem existed, and this time I was not going to let them turn my memory into an attitude. I had the charge, I had the timestamp, I had the passenger count, and soon I would have the one thing my family feared more than my anger: a witness who did not owe them loyalty. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. For a few seconds, I lay still in the gray light of my bedroom, listening to the heat click through the baseboards and trying to remember why my chest felt tight. Then I saw my phone on the nightstand. 8 missed calls, 4 from my father, 2 from my mother, 1 from Paige, 1 from Ethan. There were also 3 texts from my father, each shorter than the last. "Call me. Claire, answer your phone. This is not how adults handle things." I read that one twice, not because it surprised me, but because it sounded exactly like him. In my father's world, adulthood meant accepting his version of events quickly enough to protect his comfort. Anything else was drama. I did not answer right away. I got dressed for work: black trousers, cream sweater, small gold hoops, the same clothes I would have worn on any other Friday. I made coffee, toasted an English muffin, and stood at my kitchen counter while my bank app loaded. The grease deposit was still pending. The dispute case number sat beneath it like a small piece of armor. At 7:06, another message came from my mother. "Your father is very upset. Please don't let this become something ugly." I looked at the word ugly for a long time. Not wrong, not illegal, not hurtful. Ugly. That was how my mother measured conflict. If people could not see it, it could still be managed. If people see it, then the person who exposed it had become the problem. I typed back only one sentence: "The charge on my card is unauthorized." 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then vanished. She did not reply. I drove to the office through traffic that moved slowly under a low white sky. Minneapolis had that flat winter color that makes every building look like it is holding its breath. My windshield wipers scraped at a thin film of salt. I remember gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2, not because I was afraid, but because I was trying not to rehearse arguments. Arguments were where my family was strongest. Facts were where I had a chance. At work, I parked on level 3 of the garage and sat there for a minute before going in. I opened the folder on my phone and reviewed what I had saved the night before. Screenshots, declined charges, the bank dispute number, texts about old payments, notes from past transfers. Then I created a second folder and named it Timeline. That word helped me breathe. Timeline meant sequence. Sequence meant no one could rearrange the story to make themselves look surprised. By 8:30, I was at my desk, scanning through a corporate travel fraud report while my own life sat open in a separate browser tab. My team worked in a quiet section of the building with glass-walled conference rooms and low voices. Nobody there knew that my family had tried to put a Greek vacation on my card. Nobody knew that my father had probably spent the morning calling me ungrateful in a kitchen I had helped pay to keep. Around 9:10, my direct manager, Marisol, stopped by my desk. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed, calm, and impossible to fool. She had been in payment risk longer than anyone on our floor, and she could read a bad transaction from a sentence fragment. "You're very still today," she said. I looked up. Am I? Yes, that usually means either you found something interesting or someone made the mistake of lying to you. I almost smiled. "Both," I said. She studied my face for a moment. "Conference room?" I should have said no. I usually kept family things private because privacy had always felt like loyalty. But something had changed the night before. My silence had been used too many times as a hiding place for other people's behavior, so I nodded. We went into the small conference room near the windows. I closed the door and told her a careful version. Not the whole childhood, not every payment, just the facts. My family booked a trip without me. My card was charged. I froze the card. I filed a dispute. The agency might contact me because my information was attached. Marisol listened the way good investigators listen. She did not gasp. She did not interrupt. She did not say, "But they're your family." When I finished, she leaned back and asked, "Was your work email used?" "No." "Was your company card used?" "No." "Any chance they have access to your employment verification, pay stubs, or anything tied to your professional credentials?" The question made my stomach tighten. "I don't think so." That is not the same as no. I knew she was right. My father had never respected the line between personal and practical. If he thought my job title could help him get through a payment issue, he would use it. Not because he thought of it as fraud, because in his mind, anything connected to me was already within family reach. Marisol folded her hands on the table. "Document everything. Do not take verbal calls from merchants if you can avoid it. Request written summaries. If the travel agency says anyone claimed authorization, get the exact language." "And Claire?" I looked at her. "Do not let them make you prove you're hurt. You only need to prove what happened." That sentence stayed with me. Do not let them make you prove you're hurt. I had wasted years trying to do that, trying to make my mother understand the loneliness, trying to make Paige understand the small cuts, trying to make Ethan understand that using someone and loving them were not the same thing, trying to make my father understand anything that did not serve him. Pain was too easy for them to debate. A charge was not. At 10:22, the travel agency called. The number came through as unknown, but the voicemail arrived right after. A woman named Serena from Lydian Coast Travel said she was following up on a payment interruption for the Hensley Grease package and needed confirmation from the billing contact. I did not call back immediately. I emailed instead. "Hello, Serena. This is Claire Hensley. Please send all questions regarding the booking and payment authorization in writing. I do not authorize any additional charges to my card ending in 4187. Then I waited. At 10:41, she replied, "Thank you, Miss Hensley. We have noted your request. For our records, Martin Hensley stated during booking that you approved use of this card for the family travel deposit and remaining balance. Please confirm whether that authorization is valid." There it was, not assumed, stated. My father had not just used my card, he had spoken my permission into existence because he expected the world to accept his confidence as proof. I read the email 3 times, then I saved it to the timeline folder. My hands were cold but steady. I replied, "I did not approve use of my card for this booking. I am not a passenger on the itinerary. Please remove my card information from the reservation immediately and provide written confirmation that no further charges will be attempted." Serena answered 12 minutes later. "Understood. We will pause the booking pending verified payment from the travelers. Your card will be removed from the active payment profile. Please note that without payment verification, certain hotel and tour holds may expire within 24 hours. I forwarded the email to my personal account. Then I printed it. I do not know why the printed copy mattered, but it did. Maybe because paper made the truth feel less fragile. Maybe because my family had always been good at making conversations disappear, and I wanted something that could sit on a table without being interrupted. At noon, Paige called again. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the transcription appeared. "Claire, I don't know what Dad did exactly, but Mom is crying and Ethan is furious, and everything is getting really intense. Can you please just call? Nobody wanted to hurt you. I think this is all being blown up because people are stressed. I listened to it once. Nobody wanted to hurt you." That was one of those sentences people used when they wanted to skip past the part where they did hurt you. I saved the voicemail. At 12:18, Ethan texted, "Are you seriously going to ruin a trip you weren't even going on?" I stared at that message longer than all the others, because that was the truth, wasn't it? In his mind, the injury was not that I had been excluded. The injury was that I had power over something from which I was supposed to remain absent. I replied, "I am not ruining the trip. I am refusing to pay for it." He wrote back immediately, "Same thing. I saved that too." By mid-afternoon, the shape of my next step became clear. My family would not respond to private messages with honesty. They would respond with pressure. One at a time, they would call, guilt, soften, twist, and exhaust me until I agreed to a version of the story that protected everyone except me. So I decided not to meet them one at a time. At 3:04, I sent a group text to my father, my mother, Paige, and Ethan. "We need to discuss the Greece booking today at 6:30. Everyone who is listed as a traveler should be present. I will not discuss this separately or by phone." My father responded first. "Absolutely not. You do not summon this family like a meeting." I typed back, "Then I will continue handling it through the bank and the travel agency only." My mother replied a moment later, "We can talk at home. Please don't make this formal." Formal, another word she feared. Formal meant records. Formal meant witnesses. Formal meant my father could not stand in a doorway and raise his voice until the room bent around him. I wrote, "It became formal when my card was used without permission." No one answered for 6 minutes. Then Paige wrote, "Fine, I'll be there." Ethan sent, "This is insane." My father sent nothing. At 5:25, as I was packing my laptop bag, Serena from the travel agency emailed again. She confirmed my card had been removed and added something I had not expected. "For transparency, Mr. Hensley has requested that we keep the booking active until tonight while he secures another payment method. He stated the billing issue was due to a misunderstanding with his daughter." A misunderstanding with his daughter, not unauthorized use, not false authorization, not exclusion, a misunderstanding. I printed that email too. Then I sat at my desk for 1 more minute, looking at the clean stack of papers beside my laptop. The stack was not thick, maybe 16 pages total, but it held years inside it. Not every wound, not every slight, not every dinner where I had been treated like a spare chair until the check came. Just enough. That was the discipline I needed. Enough to prove the pattern. Not so much that I looked like I was begging them to understand my heart. At 6:17, I pulled into my parents' driveway. Their house looked the same as it always did. Warm porch light, maple tree bare against the sky, white curtains in the dining room window. A house that had trained me to confuse familiarity with safety. My father's SUV was there. Paige's little blue car was behind it. Ethan's truck was parked crooked at the curb. I sat in my car until 6:29. Then I picked up my laptop bag, the printed folder, and my phone. Before I got out, I sent one final email to Serena. "Please confirm that no person other than me may authorize charges on any card in my name." Her reply came as I reached the porch. "Confirmed." I stood there for a second with my hand on the doorknob, looking down at that single word. Confirmed. Inside, I could already hear my father's voice, low, angry, certain. But for the first time in my life, I was not walking into that house with only my feelings. I was walking in with proof. When I walked into my parents' house, everyone was already in the dining room. That was my mother's choice, I'm sure of it. The dining room was where she believed people behaved better. It had the long walnut table, the framed family photos, the cabinet with glass doors, and the white runner she only used when she wanted a room to look controlled. My father stood near the window with his arms folded. My mother sat at the table with a tissue folded neatly in her hand. Paige was in the chair closest to the kitchen, shoulders tense, face pale beneath a careful layer of makeup. Ethan sat across from her, tapping his thumb against his phone like the whole thing was an inconvenience he had been forced to attend. There were 4 mugs on the table, not 5. I noticed that before anyone spoke. My mother saw me notice. Her expression shifted for half a second, but she did not get up to get another one. That was the strange thing about my family. Even in the middle of being exposed for using me, they still could not remember to make space for me. I placed my laptop bag on the empty end of the table and set the folder beside it. My father looked at the folder first. "What is that?" "Records," I said. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Of course." My mother said, "Claire, please sit down. We don't need this to become hostile." I pulled out the chair at the end of the table. It made a soft scraping sound against the hardwood floor. It became hostile when my card was charged without permission. Ethan leaned back. "Can we stop saying it like that?" I looked at him. "What would you prefer?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. That was always the problem with softer words. They sounded better until someone asked you to define them. My father stepped away from the window. This was a misunderstanding. A serious one, maybe, but a misunderstanding. I opened the folder. No. A misunderstanding is when two people remember a conversation differently. I was not part of any conversation. My mother pressed the tissue under one eye. "Your father thought—" "I know what he thought," I said quietly. "He thought I would cover it because I usually do." The room went still, not because I had raised my voice, because I had not. My father's jaw tightened. "You need to be careful with your tone." I looked at him for a moment. I used to shrink at that sentence. He had said it to me when I was 16 and asked why Paige got the larger bedroom after we moved. He had said it when I was 22 and asked why Ethan's speeding tickets were somehow a family expense. He had said it when I was 30 and asked when the roof repair money would be repaid. Careful with your tone meant be quiet before your truth becomes inconvenient. This time, I did not adjust myself. "My tone is fine," I said. "Your authorization is the issue." Paige looked down at the table. Ethan muttered, "This is exactly what I meant." My father turned on him, not helping. Then my mother reached for the softest version of the knife. "Claire, nobody wanted you to feel excluded." I looked at the 4 mugs again. "Then why are there 4 coffee mugs on the table?" Nobody answered. It was such a small thing. Too small, maybe, for anyone outside the family to understand. But in that moment, the 4 mugs said everything the grease package had said. They had gathered to discuss the damage done to me and still set the room as if I was not fully one of them. My mother looked embarrassed. Paige whispered, "Mom?" My father exhaled sharply. "We are not here to discuss mugs." "No," I said. "We're here to discuss the same thing in a more expensive form." I took out the first page and turned it toward them. "This is the charge from Harbor and Vale Travel Services, $7,840. It posted last night at 12:13 a.m. to my card. The booking note says Grease Family Package, Hensley, Party of 4. Ethan looked away. Paige's eyes moved over the page quickly, then returned to the passenger count. My mother reached for it, but I kept my hand on the corner. "You can look. You can't take it." My father scoffed. "You think we're going to steal paper now?" I looked at him. "I didn't think you would steal my card either." The sentence landed hard. My mother made a small sound, like I had struck him instead of answered him. My father's face reddened. "Enough." I turned to the second page. "This is the email from the travel agency, Serena Morales, booking coordinator. She wrote that during the booking process, Dad stated I approved the use of my card for the family travel deposit and remaining balance." Paige's head lifted. Ethan stopped tapping his phone. My mother looked at my father. That was the first real shift in the room. Not because they cared about the charge. They had already known there was a charge. The charge could still be explained away as convenience, habit, an old card on file. But a statement of approval was different. That required a lie. My father looked at the email, then at me. She misunderstood me. I placed the page flat on the table. Then we can call her. His face changed so quickly I almost missed it. One second he was angry, the next he was alert. My mother said, "Claire, that isn't necessary." "It is necessary," I said, "because Dad says Serena misunderstood him. Serena can clarify." Ethan sat forward. "You're seriously going to call some travel agent into family business?" "She is already in it," I said. "He used her to process my card." My father pointed at me. "You will not embarrass me in front of a stranger." I held his gaze. "You were comfortable using my name with a stranger." That was when Paige looked at him and said, very softly, "Dad, did you tell them Claire said yes?" He did not answer her. He looked at me instead, as if I had caused the question by existing. I unlocked my phone and pressed call from Serena's email signature. I put it on speaker and laid it in the center of the table. The ringing sounded too loud in that polished room. My mother stared at the phone like it was something dangerous. Ethan whispered, "This is insane." Paige said nothing. On the fourth ring, Serena answered. "Lydian Coast Travel, this is Serena." "Hi, Serena, this is Claire Hensley. I emailed you earlier regarding the Hensley Greece booking. I'm here with the travelers now, and I wanted to clarify the payment authorization issue. Are you able to confirm what was stated during booking?" There was a brief pause. "Yes, Miss Hensley. For privacy, I can only discuss general account notes unless all parties consent." I looked around the table. "My father is here," I said. "Martin Hensley. The booking was made under his name." My father's face had gone rigid. I looked at him. "Do you consent?" He said nothing. The silence stretched. Serena remained professionally quiet on the line. My father finally said, "This is ridiculous." "That is not consent," I said. My mother whispered, "Martin." He looked at her, furious. Then he leaned toward the phone. "Fine. Yes, I consent." Serena's voice stayed even. "Thank you. Our notes show that Mr. Hensley provided the card ending in 4187 and stated that Claire Hensley was his daughter and had approved the card being used for the deposit and final payment. When asked whether Miss Hensley was one of the travelers, he stated no, but that she was handling payment for the family." Paige covered her mouth. Ethan looked straight down at the table. My mother closed her eyes. My father said, "That is not how I phrased it." Serena replied, still calm, "I can only read what was entered in the booking notes based on the call." The room had changed completely. It was not dramatic. No one shouted. No one overturned a chair. But something had moved out of my father's hands. The story was no longer his to shape. I thanked Serena and ended the call. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. I looked at my father, but I did not feel the satisfaction I once imagined I would feel if my family were ever forced to see the truth. It was not satisfying. It was sad. Sad in a clean, cold way. Because the truth had been simple the whole time. He had just counted on my silence being simpler. Paige was the first to speak. "You told them she was handling payment?" My father turned toward her. "I thought she would help." "But you didn't ask her." "She always helps." That was it. 3 words. The whole family system stripped down to its frame. She always helps. My mother opened her eyes and looked at me. For once, she did not seem disappointed. She seemed cornered by something she could not soften. I pulled out another page. "This is a summary of the charges I have covered in the last 5 years. I'm not putting this here to ask for repayment tonight. I'm putting it here because every time I said I felt used, someone told me I was being sensitive. Claire, come on." "No," I said. "You asked me this afternoon if I was seriously going to ruin a trip I wasn't even going on." His eyes flicked to Paige. I took out a printed copy of his text and placed it on the table. "You wrote that because, in your mind, the problem wasn't that I was excluded. The problem was that I had the ability to stop paying after being excluded." His face turned red. "I was mad." "I know." That was all I said. I did not punish him with a speech. The text did enough. My mother reached for the tissue again, but this time she did not cry. She looked tired, almost old, and for one painful second, I wanted to rescue her from the discomfort. That instinct came up automatically. Then I let it pass. My father put both hands on the back of a chair. So, what do you want, Claire? An apology? Money? Do you want all of us to beg? No. My answer seemed to confuse him. I want my card removed from every account. That is already done. I want the charge disputed. That is already done. I want no one in this family to use my name, my email, my credit, my address, my job title, or any account connected to me for anything. That starts now. My mother said, "You're cutting us off?" "I'm cutting off access." Paige looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time that night. "I didn't know he used your card," she said. "I believe you," I said. Her shoulders lowered a little. "But you knew I wasn't invited." She looked down. "Yes." That answer hurt more because it was honest. I nodded once. "Thank you for saying that." Ethan stood abruptly. "This is too much. It's a trip." I looked at him. "No, it's a trip for you, for me. It's a receipt for years of being needed and not chosen." He had no answer to that. My father pushed the chair in with too much force. "If you walk out of here after accusing your own father of theft, don't expect this family to just go back to normal." I gathered the papers slowly and placed them back in the folder. "I'm not asking for normal." My mother's voice broke. "Then what are you asking for?" I zipped my laptop bag and stood. Accuracy. No one followed me when I walked toward the front door. In the hallway, beside the little table where my mother kept holiday cards and spare keys, I paused. My old house key was still on my ring. Brass, scratched at the edges, familiar against my palm. I took it off and set it in the small ceramic bowl. The sound it made was tiny, but everyone in the dining room heard it. The first message came before I reached my car. It was from Paige. "I'm sorry. Just 2 words." I stood in my parents' driveway with my coat half buttoned, the cold air moving through the bare branches of the maple tree, and looked at the message until the screen dimmed. For most of my life, I would have answered immediately. I would have said it was okay. I would have softened it. I would have found some way to make her feel less guilty before I had even fully felt what she had done. But that night, I put the phone in my pocket. I was learning that not every apology needed to be handled the moment it arrived. Sometimes a person could be sorry and still need to sit with what they had helped create. I drove home through quiet streets, past houses with porch lights on, and blue television slickers in living room windows. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. Not because I was fine. I was not fine. I could feel the ache starting under my ribs now that the meeting was over and my body no longer had to hold itself like a closed file. But beneath the ache, there was something else. Relief. Not happiness. Not victory. Relief. The kind that comes when you finally stop arguing with a locked door and decide you are allowed to leave the hallway. By the time I reached my apartment, there were 6 more messages. 2 from my mother, 1 from Ethan, 3 from my father. My mother wrote, "Your father feels attacked. Please give him time." Then, a minute later, she wrote, "I don't know why you had to involve the travel agent." Ethan wrote, "You made Dad look like a criminal in his own house." My father's messages came last. "You have no idea what you've done. This family will remember tonight. Do not expect help from me again." I sat on the edge of my bed and read that final message twice. "Do not expect help from me again." It should have hurt more than it did. Maybe it would have years earlier. But by then, I had enough records to know that his help had always been smaller than his memory of it. He remembered raising me as if childhood created a lifetime debt. He remembered every ride, every meal, every winter coat, every tuition form he had signed. He did not remember the money I sent quietly. He did not remember the emergencies I absorbed. He did not remember the way I had protected his pride at hotel desks, pharmacy counters, and family tables. So I did not argue. I wrote back one sentence: I will not be available for financial help going forward. Then I turned my phone on silent and placed it in the kitchen drawer. That small act felt strange. For years, my phone had been the leash. A buzz from my mother could pull me out of dinner with friends. A call from Ethan could turn a quiet Sunday into a bank transfer. A text from Paige could make me open my laptop at midnight to solve something she had refused to read. That night, I made tea and let the phone buzz unheard behind a drawer front. The next morning, the travel agency confirmed that the Greece package had been paused pending verified payment from the travelers. By noon, the boutique hotel in Santorino released the deposit hold. By 4, the private sailing tour was canceled. The agency offered my father 48 hours to keep the flights active with a new card. He did not have one. I learned that from Paige 3 days later. She asked to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and her office. I almost said no, but there was something in her first apology that sounded different from her usual discomfort. She did not write, "Sorry you felt hurt." She did not write, "Sorry this got so messy." She wrote, "I'm sorry I let them treat you like that." So I went. She was already sitting at a small table by the window when I arrived, turning a paper napkin into soft little shreds. Paige always looked put together, even when she was upset. Cream coat, neat hair, gold ring on her right hand. But her face looked unguarded in a way I had rarely seen. "I didn't know about the card," she said before I had even taken off my gloves. "I know, but I knew you weren't invited." I sat down across from her. "Yes," she looked at the napkin pieces. "Mom told me you probably wouldn't enjoy it. She said you don't like being away from work." I let out a quiet breath. "Did you ask me?" No. That was the part that mattered, not the excuse, the absence. "I think I didn't ask because I already knew the answer," she said. "Not whether you wanted to go. I mean, I knew it was wrong. I did not rescue her from that either." The silence sat between us for a moment, uncomfortable but honest. Then Paige said something I was not expecting. "Dad asked me to put the new deposit on my card after you left." I looked up. "He said it would only be temporary, that he would move money around before the statement closed." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "He said you were being emotional, but at least you had always understood family obligations." There it was again, the role, looking for a new body. "What did you say?" I asked. I said no. For the first time that morning, I felt something soften. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but recognition. She had found the edge of the same machine I had been standing against for years. "He got so angry," she said. "Mom cried. Ethan said I was being selfish because his girlfriend had already bought clothes for the trip." "Did that surprise you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, that's the worst part. I think it embarrassed me because it didn't." We sat there while the barista called names and steam hissed behind the counter. Outside, people walked past in winter coats, carrying their ordinary lives in paper cups and canvas bags. Paige wiped under one eye with the back of her finger. "I'm sorry I let you be the practical one for all of us." That apology was not perfect. Real apologies rarely are. But it was specific, and I had learned to respect specific things. "Thank you," I said. She looked relieved, but I held up one hand gently. "That doesn't mean everything goes back." Her face tightened, but she nodded. "I know. I'm not paying for family emergencies anymore. I'm not handling Dad's disputes. I'm not fixing Ethan's mistakes. I'm not being copied into bills and called difficult when I ask questions." "I understand. And if we have a relationship, it has to be one where you ask me directly instead of accepting whatever version Mom gives you." Paige looked down, then back at me. I can try. That was honest too, not grand, not dramatic. Just try. The Greece trip collapsed completely by the end of that week. Not because I canceled it. That distinction mattered to me. I canceled access to my card. The trip collapsed because it had been built on access they did not have the right to use. My father tried one cousin, then another. Someone in the extended family told my Aunt Melissa, and by Sunday night, the story had spread in the polite, edited way family scandals travel. At first, the version was that I had overreacted about a misunderstanding. Then Serena's email existed. Then Ethan complained to the wrong cousin and admitted I had not been invited. Then Paige, to her credit, corrected my mother during a phone call and said, "No, Mom, Claire didn't ruin Greece. Dad used her card." After that, the family got quieter. Not kind, just quieter. There is a difference. My mother left one voicemail that I kept for a while, then deleted. Her voice was tired. "Claire, I don't know how we got here. I wish you had come to me before making everything official. Your father is humiliated. Ethan says you won't answer him. Paige is upset. I just want us to be a family again." I listened to it in my kitchen with one hand resting on the counter. Then I deleted it, because I knew exactly how we got there. We got there one small, unpaid favor at a time. We got there through every moment I said yes when I meant I was tired. We got there through every dinner where I was useful in the kitchen and invisible at the table. We got there because my family had mistaken my patience for permanent permission. I moved a few months later. Not far, just 20 minutes across town, into a one-bedroom apartment with better light and a balcony that overlooked a narrow courtyard. The first thing I bought for it was a small round dining table with 2 chairs. Not 6, not 8, not a table built around people who might or might not remember to include me. 2 chairs. One for me, one for someone who actually wanted to sit there. Marisol helped me carry boxes on a Saturday morning, and Paige came by the next day with coffee and a new set of mugs, 5 of them, which made me laugh when I opened the box. She looked embarrassed. I didn't think about the number. "I know," I said. Then I kept all 5. Not because everything was healed, because sometimes an object can change meaning when it comes from a different place. Ethan did not apologize for a long time. When he finally did, it came in a text that said, "I was mad and I said things wrong." I did not answer for 2 days. Then I wrote, "I'm willing to talk when you're ready to be specific." He did not respond. That was an answer too. My father mailed me a check 6 months later, $700. No note, no apology, just a check folded inside a blank envelope. I deposited it. Not because money repaired the damage, but because accountability was allowed to arrive imperfectly and still be recorded. My mother called on my birthday. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short. "Happy birthday, Claire. I hope you're doing well." No guilt, no request, no mention of the family being broken. I called her back the next day. We spoke for 12 minutes. It was careful, distant, and strangely peaceful. For the first time, I did not leave the call with a task. The following summer, I booked a trip to Maine by myself. Not Greece, not anything symbolic, just a quiet week near the water, in a small inn with blue shutters and a breakfast room that smelled like coffee and warm bread. When the charge notification came through, I was sitting on my own couch, wearing old socks, with a book open beside me. $1,280. Harborview Inn. 1 guest, my card, my choice. I looked at the alert and smiled because nobody had to approve whether I belonged. I already did. Sometimes quiet justice is not a courtroom or a public apology or a dramatic confession in front of everyone who doubted you. Sometimes it is a frozen card, a printed email, a key left in a ceramic bowl, a phone placed in a drawer while other people learned that access was never the same thing as love. I did not destroy my family. I stopped funding the version of family that required me to disappear. And once I stopped disappearing, I finally had enough room to live.